All right, I'm back to trying to do the board meeting. I got distracted again by the bus calls, and let's do the board meeting, which is what I wanted to do.
In a board meeting before. We provide 45 minutes at the beginning of our meeting for individuals or groups to talk to us about all board matters, including any of the resolutions or action that are on the board meetings today. We usually have a sign-up sheet, but what we have is that you've heard our web master talking about how to make your presence known to indicate you want to provide testimony. I'm going to ask that you please limit your testimony to 3 minutes if you can. And if you can't do it, I'll let you know when the 3 minutes are up, and I ask you to wrap up your testimony. And I will also point out that you can provide us any written testimony at any time by submitting it to, and we have links on our website at trimet.org.
Yes, I did your
under our board
I did your
portions that you
thing.
can submit any testimony to us. So with that, I'm going to open the public forum up and ask that Jeff check and see who's interested in providing that, and I'll let him pick the people in the order they've actually indicated they want to speak. So Jeff, can you do that?
Yes, the first person that indicated they wanted to speak is Kwatemak, and I'm going to unmute them now.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can't hear you. If you'd give us your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Kwatemak Mikolaskis. For the record, I'm with Bus Riders Unite, and I honestly didn't even have anything written. Just out of experience, there has been little to nothing done about any testimony I've given to Trimet. But I do want to speak on this most distaste of how our voice has been treated in the Trimet space, like at TIAC, at this new safety public committee table we've been effectively banned from.
Whoa.
We just feel really left out, and that our voice doesn't matter to Trimet when they are kind of, it feels that they're kind of painting this narrative for their own benefit in the culture at Trimet, that they're looking for folks who are pro-police and pro, fair enforcing, and we see the opposite. I'm with BRU. I am friends with countless transit riders, transit advocates, and everyone is screaming for defunding and de-investing of police and fair enforcement, and replacing that with rider advocates who are unarmed, trained to be experts in de-escalation.
Right.
Recent police sweeps of riders were deemed unconstitutional, and that's not okay.
Yes, they were deemed unconstitutional, but the board passed some kind of resolution which overrides the Oregon Constitution, and nobody was willing to do a class action lawsuit, so nothing happened. It's just the way it is in America. You can't stop the hegemon, not called Trimet.
And I want to see that happen. I want to see accountability happen, and it's your job as the board to make that happen. It's your job to make sure that there isn't some exclusive table that Trimet has handpicked who they want to be there. And I'm not seeing that from y'all, and I really want to see that, or I just will lose faith in our transit agency altogether. I already have, honestly, but you're the last. I just feel like you guys right here are the last chance.
There's no last chance. They're not going to listen to you. This is a secret society. Yeah, you can talk to them. I can write them a letter. It does absolutely no good. I've been watching this shit for 20 years. Doesn't do any good. You're wasting your time. But it's good to talk to them anyway, because it's good. At least you let them know that they're lying pieces of shit.
Last hope we have in making sure that our transit actually works for people. Some other points I want to touch on is there's a lack of ridership and youth representation. Just general rider and youth representation at these meetings and committees.
Yeah.
Another thing is we haven't had a commitment to no fare hikes, and that's really important, especially in a pandemic where folks' incomes are being affected and affected in a negative sense and limited. Yeah, so really what I'm asking for is like a sweeping change in the processes and accountability processes at Trimet and the way the board has been engaged with Trimet and actually holding them accountable, because I'm not seeing it. No one I know is seeing it, and we're all really just upset, and we really want to see change, or we will have no faith, and we want to have our faith restored in Trimet, and I want to see that happen. Thank you.
We all want to see that happen, but it's not going to happen. Okay, it's not going to happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be Debbie Downer, but it's not going to happen.
Thank you for your comments, and I think I speak on behalf of the board that we definitely want your input in our process and value it. We also understand your position. We also understand there may be conflicting or various other opinions out in the community, and I think our staff has developed a good process to allow us to get that input.
See, he's lying. He's lying. We saw who was it? Willamette Week or Mercury? I don't know. Somebody did a request, public records request, and they had like 3 people that were pro-police state. Okay, they had 3 people. So he's lying. I mean, we already know these people lie. This is what they do. These people are Trump. Okay, they're Trump at this level. They have their agenda. They're going to only stick to their agenda. They're going to tell you everything's wonderful, and they're going to tell you that everybody supports them. Exactly what Trump does. Exactly what he does.
So I would say stay engaged. We want your input, and we're looking forward to a very thorough and inclusive discussion in terms of safety, security, and equity at Trimet.
Equity. Yeah. There's no equity at
So with
Trimet.
that, unless any other board member has
There's no equity. I can't believe he actually responded to him. I mean, usually they just go to the next comment.
any comment, I'm going to ask Jeff to get the number.
Yes, Bruce, if I could. Could you please, and I want to pronounce your name correctly, Guatemala? Anyway,
yeah.
I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but would you please submit written testimony as well?
Yes.
Yes, I'll have something written up later.
And thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on that.
Yeah, Kathy. Kathy! We had a lot of hope for you. You disappointed us, lady. You still disappoint us.
I feel like, the board's role is really to listen, and I think these public comments are
No. The board's role is to protect the general manager, okay? Let's be honest. Stop lying. Stop making these things up. That's your role, is to protect the general manager from the public.
sort of that 3-minute chance, right, to listen to community members. But what I'm hearing you say is there's maybe some specific concerns that you may have. So I agree. I think providing, I think what would be helpful for me is to have maybe some specific, experiences that you may have with being involved with either TIAC or the Safety and Security Committee would be really great. Thank you so much again for coming to the board with your concerns. But if possible, if you can provide a little bit more specifics, I think that would be great. And then that way we can, try to direct some of those concerns to staff or problem solve it in some other ways.
I include that in the written testimony. Would that be sufficient, or is there another channel I should put that through?
The written will be great.
Yeah, why don't you read my testimony?
Thank you.
Yeah, fuckers. All right.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah. Jeff.
You want to go down to our next requester?
Yes, the next person is Jesse Joseph, and I'm unmuting him now.
Can you hear me?
Can.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm testifying with BRU in support of bringing back the Writer Advocates Program. And the way that I think about it is it feels like a standard joke on TV at this point where somebody, some kind of incident happens and then people call the police and then they show up 2 hours later and they tell the person to fill out a report and then they leave. And I feel like that's how we're trained to think about like what safety is and what like safety officers do. And that's basically how transit cops work in my view, right? Like you have these roaming bands of transit cops who make six figures, and you got to pay them for equipment, and you got to buy the SUVs they drive around in.
Yep.
And then they show up after an incident has already happened, and then generally they escalate the situation. And I don't really see that as an effective safety measure, especially when compared to like a well-trained rider advocate program who are actually riding with passengers, right? The amount that you're spending on these really expensive cops and their equipment and their, everything, you could employ way more rider advocates who are actually on the vehicles and, responding to things as they happen. And they can see what's happening, and they're trained in de-escalation so that, since they can see what's happening, they're better able to like respond to the situation. And I don't see, the way that the transit cops work right now as being able to do that in any way at all. So I think the rider advocate program is a much more effective way, even from the or just in general. Like it's a more effective way to keep people safe on transit.
You got my applause.
Thank you. Were you finished?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. And I will point out again that the transit advocates are definitely something that are being considered and discussed as part of the reimagining of our safety, security, and equity. So again, hopefully you'll stay tuned there as I suggested.
Every time I hear the word equity, I want to shoot myself. It's like the word nimble. I want to shoot myself.
Thank you. Jeff?
All right, next person is Heather Moline. Heather, I'm unmuting you now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Moline. I've been a Bus Riders Unite member for about a year since my father became transit dependent after traumatic brain injury. And then I, shortly after, started undergoing screening for a bunch of autoimmune disorders that might leave me with the inability to drive. So very suddenly and very quickly, transit access has become very personal, has become thought of as a human right in my head. I also used to help run St. Francis Dining Hall near Southeast 11th and Stark. It's the last day center for people experiencing homelessness in the inner east side of Portland. When I worked there, the most frequent ask was for transit tickets to go to appointments with social workers because people just can't afford to get on the bus otherwise. And the biggest fear was definitely of police. And when someone called the police on someone, I saw the same cycle over and over again, which is like this. So the police show up and they very politely have their hands holstered on their guns. They talk to the person, not asking much about their needs, not being able to meet their needs because they're not trained to meet those needs. The person might get taken into the station, might get written up, and eventually the person would end up on our doorstep again after all this cycle was over and over. All this did was raise blood pressure, trigger the person experiencing homelessness so that they'd be more tense and afraid the next time they got on transit or the next time someone called the cops on them. And it pretty much wasted taxpayer resources. That was very, very clear to me working there over and over the course of a couple years. So that's why I really, really believe that OPAL's vision that the way to a safer system is not through greater policing, but through things like advocacy, de-escalation, better services. I've seen the psychological damage that the current policing and transit system inflicts on people who literally have no other safe place to go and increasingly fewer places to go. And I
stop the presses for a minute because that just happens to be my Twitter. Public transportation is the last refuge for the American dispossessed. Meanwhile, the leaders, they call themselves the leaders. They're actually parasitical psychopaths. Bail out stock portfolios and want to build useless light rail. And here you see a dispossessed sitting in a light rail station, nowhere to go. In a society that could care less if she lives or dies. We're a completely broken society. I don't think people have any idea. That's a woman. I don't think people have any idea how broken our society really is. My friends, we are living in the final days of an American society that we knew before. It's over, folks. It's over. And that's what's happened to this country is painful to watch.
I believe raising fare prices and employing more police, rather than hiring people who were trained like me in nonviolent de-escalation and social service support, leads to a vicious cycle that really leaves all of us, not just those people, but all of us more tense. So I know that Trimet has taken some really important steps towards envisioning a safe for all transit system. And I want to thank you for what you've done so far on this. But in the realm of specifics, I think our specifics of BRU have been pretty clear, including that the Safety Advisory Committee doesn't include an organization with the vision of leaders, of the people who are hardest affected by everything from racism and unemployment to COVID-19 and gentrification. And in order to guarantee a system that's really safe for everyone, but also that doesn't waste taxpayer resources, I believe Trimet needs to incorporate these voices into leadership meaningfully. That's all I've got. Thank you for your time.
Good testimony. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, she's right. But they're not going to do it. You see, these people here, $10,000 a month public pensions, some lawyer. These are all elites. They don't know what homeless is. All of them are elites. They have no empathy toward the homeless. They don't know what it is. This is America right here. This is Trump right here. Same thing.
Jeff?
All right, next person is Tristan Isaac.
Tristan!
I'm meeting you.
And here's an interesting character. This guy's cool.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Tristan, good morning.
I don't agree with
morning.
anything he says, but I agree with a lot of it.
Well, I want to start by saying that, my name is Tristan. I'm a member of Bus Riders Unite, and thank you for the opportunity to testify. And I want to start by saying that Bus Riders Unite stands in solidarity with the workers of Amalgamated Transit Union 757 in their fight for a fair contract. So this morning, I'd like to speak on Trimet's ongoing project known as Reimagining Public Safety and Security on Transit. To begin, I'd like to ask, what does it mean to reimagine something? To me, it means discarding all of one's preconceived notions about what is possible and embracing the revolutionary. With that in mind, I've been disappointed to find Trimet's approach not at all equal to the task this political moment calls for. It's hard to picture a world without police. All of us have lived in a society that constantly reinforces the idea that police keep us safe. From popular crime dramas portraying cops as heroes, to the almost unparalleled political clout of police officer associations. However, the evidence increasingly shows that cops merely reinforce the structural violence that leads to criminal behavior and do nothing to address the root causes. Tens of thousands of people marching in the streets for months on end demand that we reimagine a truly just world free from the violence of police. This is where Trimet is falling short. While a divestment of $1.8 million is a great start, Trimet's approach to this process makes me afraid that they will go no further. Trimet executives themselves have stated they have no interest in abolishing the transit police.
Yeah.
And the makeup of the newly assembled Transit Safety Advisory Committee reflects that perspective.
Yep.
While it does include many representatives from valued local organizations who work with elders, with disabilities, and youth, it also includes a number of representatives from the police, both transit and otherwise, many of whom are from outside the Trimet area and have no experience dealing with our local system. What's missing from this committee is a local transit advocacy group. In fact, despite expressing keen interest in being part of this committee, from the very beginning, my organization, OPAL, has been explicitly barred from attending by Trimet representatives.
Now, think about that. Trimet has barred OPAL from being part of their discussion. They have no legitimacy at all. If Trimet has barred OPAL and BRU from the table, they're completely illegitimate. There's no legitimacy at all with the Trimet process. None. There are none. What you have at Trimet is the local version of Trump. I keep saying that because everybody wants to say Trump is a rogue out of control. Well, you have these same systems here. Okay, you have the same idea. You have the same kind of leadership. We're going to do this our way and nobody's going to stop us. That's Trumpian. This is what they do. I'm going to do this my way, and you're not going to. If they're not going to include OPAL and ATU 757, then what's the point of having a committee? It's not a committee. It's a sock puppet meeting, just like these people here.
If allowed to sit at this table, we would have been the only organization with an abolitionist lens. If Trimet's goal is to truly reimagine public safety and security, why would they exclude such a strong voice advocating for a just and equitable transit system in the local community? Why move forward with a committee handpicked by Trimet executives that includes industry insiders and representatives of the status quo without local experience?
Exactly. This blue ribbon committee that this fake general manager, Kelsey, who's handpicked by McFarland, this blue ribbon committee is a joke. It's a joke. It's like the leaders. Don't you see the system we have here is a failed system? You don't want any of the leaders. That's the people you don't want in your committees. But they have a stranglehold on all of this. And this is the problem we the people have. What are we going to do about this? These people have a stranglehold over public policy, and we can't influence them. We're locked out.
In order to bring about the goal of defunding the police that so many are calling for, Trimet must heed the expertise of abolitionist groups like OPAL rather than staying mired in the status quo, and they must commit to the abolition of the transit police and not just a mere 1.8 million divestment. Thank you.
And the abolition, let me just try to qualify this, because nobody wants to abolish the police. We want the police to be used for security. Have you ever noticed how the police are never to be found when the shit's going down? They're never around when there's something happening, okay? Like one of the previous speakers says, you call them, they come in, they take a report, and then they leave. There's no crime prevention on Trimet at all, none. All they do is worry about fares.
Thank you, Tristan.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end of this, I'll ask Doug or John Gardner to kind of just give us a quick response on this, because again, as I said, your voices need to be heard, and you should be involved in a meaningful way. So we'll make sure that we get some answers for you on that. So thank you. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you make sure. I'll bet you that never comes up again. They always say that, and I mean, Kelsey's right there. Why don't you redress it, Kelsey? See, he's pushing it down. That's how they do it. They push it. Well, we'll get back to you, and they never get back to you.
Okay, last person with their hand up is Lee Helfand. Lee, I am unmuting you now.
Awesome. Can you all hear me?
We can.
Great. Good morning. My name is Lee Helfand. I use they, them pronouns, and I am with OPAL and BRU. I just wanted to echo the sentiments that have already been named here today, and just kind of build off that by saying that an abolitionist framework is not a radical framework. I think that it's pretty easy to pigeonhole communities of color and transit-dependent folks as radical or in some way outside of the mainstream. But an abolitionist framework is not radical. We can see this demonstrated in other parts of the country, even here in our own state. And we know that internationally, United States, in comparison to other major countries, has a huge problem with policing. That is where the energy behind so many of the...
Let's paint this correctly. The United States is the largest prison colony in the world. We have like half the prisoners of the whole world, and we represent like 10% of the world or something. It's something like that. I mean, this is a huge prison colony. This country is the former Soviet Union with a whole gulag system. We are a prison police state. You see it every day, everywhere. You get out and protest, they send the cops to beat you up. Okay, these are Democrat cities. That's why you know the Democrats aren't going to help you. They do what Trump does. It's exactly the same. This is a prison. We're living in a prison country, okay, a police state country. All the evidence is right there in front of you. If you don't want to believe it, don't, but it's there.
Uprisings is coming from is that we know we actually don't have to reimagine. We can look to other models to see how we can do this differently. I think that what I see in a lot of people within Trimet is being complicit in the status quo, maybe feeling like you don't have the answers for how to move forward, getting lost in a bureaucratic process for how things should be done. But we already know that an abolitionist framework can work. We have real solutions, and Trimet itself has implemented better solutions in the past. I think it's kind of silly that BRU and OPAL have been highlighting these issues for so long, and it took uprisings to even get us to this point in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of shameful.
Yep.
I think that we can recognize that this is a slow-moving agency that has resistance to change. And even with all the uprisings that have happened, we are still encountering a lot of resistance, namely being on the Safety Advisory Committee. Being on the Safety Advisory Committee is really not that big of an ask. The fact that we have to organize to even have this conversation at any length is kind of ridiculous and upsetting at this point. And I just want to emphasize that we are here to partner with you.
It's not ridiculous and upsetting. It's absurd. They do the same thing with ATU 757. They exclude them. These people who have the power and the money exclude anybody who doesn't bow to their agenda. And I'm not going to use the reference again, but
to help you in this process at every step of the way. We're not just throwing out solutions that we don't want to help create and build with you all. So please keep reaching out to us. We want to be involved in the process. We deserve a seat at the table.
Yes.
And I think we can do this a lot better if we all are able to work together. So please put OPAL and BRU on the Safety Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. It's appreciated.
Yeah, sure, Bruce.
Jeff, are there any...
Bruce Warner is now 1 year. He's been on this board almost 9 years. The term limits are 8. But this is a corrupt Democratic Party in Oregon. Very corrupt. And they like him because he's a very good crony, let's put it that way. He knows the cronies. He's been a crony for many years. He's been in a lot of committees. He's a former public manager of one of the cities, I think it's Beaverton. I mean, he's a consummate insider, so they want him there. So they leave him there, even though his term is expired.
Anybody else who indicated they want to talk to us?
No, that's it.
Okay.
We'll go a little bit longer.
Well, maybe I will ask again, maybe under your general manager's report, to talk about any response that might be helpful for these folks, because I think we understand their concerns and want to make sure that they do have an opportunity to participate and be involved. With that, then, I'm going to conclude the public forum, and I'm going to move on then to the regular business meeting agenda for the date is, I'm going to call to order the regular business meeting of the Trimet Board of Directors for October 28, 2020. And the first things on the agenda are the board reports. And I see that Director Bauman has the first two, and I'm going to ask her to maybe give us her report on the Accountability Committee. Director Bauman, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready. Good morning, everyone. Right, I've got the Accountability Committee and the Accessibility Committee, and even though they sound similar, they have very different portfolios. So the Accountability Committee, I report to you on that committee just 2 times a year, so I'd like to give you a recap on what the committee's mission is. And it's two primary roles. One is to keep an eye on the transparency and accountability page on the Trimet website, and that includes financial and planning and governance material. And second is to oversee the hotline for employee reports of.
Oh yeah, we haven't heard about that in a long time.
That hotline has been expanded to also accept requests for safety assessments.
Yeah, the hotline. We're supposed to report corruption. We haven't heard anything about that in shit. I can't remember the last time we heard anything about that. Let's hear what she says.
So at the meeting, the most recent meeting, October 15th, I believe, the committee looked at the statistics for the Accountability and Transparency website, comparing September 2020 and September 2019, and the number of page views to that site have dropped about 33%.
Jesus. Do you hear what she just said? There's less people looking at the Accountability Center. Well, you don't ever tell anybody it's there. It's not like you tweet it on your Twitter, Trimet, or do you ever put it up on your Facebook and tell people it's there? No, you don't, do you? You don't even tell people these meetings are going on. Every fucking major transit system in the goddamn country lets the public know through their social media outlets that these meetings are going on. But Trimet doesn't. But that's funny. I mean, that's funny that there's less people looking at the Accountability Center, 1/3 less. Everybody's sitting at home too. So everybody's got more time, but they don't look at it. You know why? Because they don't even know it's there. That's why.
It's not terribly surprising given the effects of the pandemic.
What? What are you talking about? Did you hear that? She says that people aren't looking at the page because of the pandemic. That's got nothing. If anything, it would be more. People would be more interested, and it could give them something to do. So this Bauman is terrible. She's made some comments before that I found personally insulting. I mean, I think she's just awful. She's a real elitist of the worst kind.
The employee hotline received 7 complaints since March. All 7 related to either safety assessments or human resources complaints. There were no reports of fraud, waste, and abuse. The reports that were received were directed to the appropriate division for follow-up. And finally, we discussed the possibility of making this...
Okay, so they're not going to tell us anything about the 7. No, heaven forbid you tell us what it's about. No, you just tell us there's 7, and we don't get to know what the 7 are. Attaboy, Trimet.
Employee hotline available on a mobile phone app in addition to the other.
Another app. How lovely.
So we discussed that and requested additional information. And that is what that committee discussed, and it will meet again next March.
Next March, Jesus.
Good. Any questions for Director Bauman?
Okay, that's
board members.
Okay, it's here the Committee of Accessible.
I'm seeing nobody with their hand raised. So, Director Bauman, do you want to move on? You have some things to report on the Committee for Accessible Transportation?
Yes, the CAT met October 21st. I'll give you a quick report. The CAT heard from Trimet staff about the Better Red project. And in particular, they heard details about making the new platform at Gateway accessible to people with disabilities and limited mobility. Brandy Lyle of the Trimet staff discussed the signage at that location, but also importantly, the configuration of ADA accessible parking at the Gateway Transit Center. That parking is going to include a number of ADA quick drop stalls, and after discussion, the CAT formally endorsed making all of the ADA stalls van accessible at Gateway. There was a report on lift performance. We heard about improved on-time performance and minimal hold time at the call center. And while paratransit has been safe in terms of avoiding the spread of COVID, lift ridership is still down. Currently about 72% due to the pandemic. I also want to go back and report briefly on a CAT ad hoc meeting on October 2nd. At that meeting, the CAT heard a presentation on PBOT's draft ADA plan, and that plan addresses how PBOT makes streets and public buildings accessible. CAT members discussed how the city needs to better coordinate with Trimet on making bus stops accessible, and members also asked for guidance about how to make complaints about issues such as uneven and damaged sidewalks and inaccessible crosswalk buttons. And what this meeting just drove home to me again, how engaged CAB members are. They're really out there in the community and very engaged in making the city generally more accessible, but in particular making transit. It's
Better red, nice big pork barrel, no cuts.
That's it. Happy to answer questions.
Good report.
Better red pork barrel.
Comments or questions by
that nobody
board members?
needs. No, move along. Where's Travis?
I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Director Bauman. We'll move on then to the Finance and Audit Committee.
Oh, no.
Director Stovall, are you there?
I am. Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Don't go on.
The
please.
Finance and Audit Committee met this morning as we normally do before our board meetings, and we covered two items. The first item was an update on the financial picture.
This guy's running for mayor.
Based on kind of performance, and you will have that in your quarterly update in regards to kind of the details in regards to how we're doing financially. As everybody knows, we've seen quite a dramatic drop in revenues and passenger revenues and, of course, ridership due to the ongoing pandemic. And so that's going to be reflected in that information kind of that's been provided to the board.
There he is.
And secondly, we actually just got an update on the Southwest Corridor, which we normally do. And I believe that we have scheduled as a board to receive a more comprehensive update on the Southwest Corridor.
The Southwest Corridor that has, I don't know, man. Do you think it's going to pass? I don't have the slightest idea. It's hard for me to tell. I don't know. I just don't know. The people in the Northwest do like to raise their own taxes for some reason. They're stupid. Who knows? We'll find out soon. We'll find out tomorrow, right? Yeah, I guess we will.
Our December board meeting. So at this point, are there any questions or comments or thoughts? President Warner and Director Simmons, they are both on the Finance and Audit Committee, so if I've left anything out, certainly please feel free to fill in, but we only covered those two quick items this morning.
Okay, there's nothing. That's nothing.
I don't see anybody wanting to add anything to your report. Thank you, Travis. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Way, is there a report from the Metro Policy Advisory Committee?
What is that supposed to be anyway?
Just 1 second. All my notes. Yes, there are things that we discussed at the mid-October MPAC meeting. One of those items is employment land site readiness toolkit update.
What?
This is in partnership with the Port of Portland,
What?
Greater Portland, Inc.,
What?
and 13 other jurisdictional partners from around the region. The main idea with this initiative is really to improve the development and readiness of sites in the region, to really better understand employment and industrial land.
Oh God, more development crap.
I think this is pertinent to Trimet as we're thinking about transit access, particularly for employers. I thought that Metro staff did a really great job also outlining a lot of the equity assessments and the equity impacts that this could create, that these sites can create in our different areas. So it was a really informative presentation.
If Trump wins, by the way, it's going to be a big blow to all of this technocracy that public transportation has. He's a big car guy. All the money will go back to the car. And most of this public transportation money gets wasted. It doesn't get spent on service. It gets spent on consultants and studies and technocrats. And I don't know how much money they've plowed into that Southwest Corridor, but it's probably well over 100 million, probably 200 million. Who knows how much? They've been working on that for years. It could be $500 million for all I know. And if that doesn't pass, what happens? All that's just wasted, just like CRC?
The second piece, which I think is also really important to highlight, is just really, where's the direction going for MPAC as a committee and as a role? If folks may remember, MPAC is an advisory group to really advise the Metro Council, particularly around land use issues. It's been an interesting discussion. I've been on Impact for about 2 years now. And there was a survey that was released to really just talk about what has been committee members' experience, how long should meetings be, etc. So about 13 folks responded to that survey. And in summary, we also had a lot of times to do small group breakout discussions, just sort of based on some of the questions that staff had for us. So overall, a lot of folks found the impact table to be helpful. They wanted to see an increased engagement and a discussion on how we can really advise Metro Council on policy.
It's garbage, man.
Many of us reported that, of course, due to COVID, the online learning has has been sort of mixed. I think a lot of people appreciated the virtual meeting space because if you remember, these meetings typically start at 5 p.m. on work days, and it's just hard with traffic and everything else to go to these meetings, especially if you're a working person. So a lot of folks have said the online format has been better for them. When asked about the different perspectives that are being represented on MPAC, this was also maybe not that surprising, but the general demographics of MPAC members are over 40 years old, white, have a higher than average income. So, a lot of us have said MPAC really does not represent a racial diversity and can definitely include more perspectives from young people, people living with disabilities, as well as other advocates. So we are going to be on a continual journey to, again, figure out the direction of impact as well as the composition. And there are no board meetings, there are no impact meetings scheduled for November. The next one will be in December. And that's all I have.
Wow, sounds like you had a very rich discussion.
Sounds like a whole bunch of shit of nothing.
Comments, questions by the board?
Yes, I couldn't find the hand-raising function, but happy to just raise my hand the old school way. Thanks for sharing that, Director White. I'm really curious about the use of the survey internally with the committee, because something the committee, the Transit Equity Advisory Committee is always working through is how to better engage and leverage the members of the team. So I'd love to see if we can glean any insight from the use of that process so that we can have a similar sort of thing. I think that would be very useful with another community-focused committee that has engagement at its center.
Absolutely, Director Gonzalez. Thank you for raising that point. I will definitely connect you with some of the staff who developed that survey. And I'm not sure if the survey findings are also public, but I will ask, and I think that information will be, valuable for all of us just moving forward.
Oh, by the way, there's no Proud Boys in Massachusetts. There's none of this crazy shit going on here. That's why it doesn't matter if Trump wins or loses in this state. He's got nothing. He's nothing to us here in Massachusetts. Nothing. There's no. It's like New York City. He's just some figure that flails about, but he has no actual impact on anything here. He hasn't affected my life at all in the last 4 years. I mean, it's from my personal point of view. But I don't go anywhere anyway. I don't go anywhere. Nobody affects my life because I don't go anywhere.
I had a question, Director White, as well, regarding the meetings and the challenge with folks getting off work and being able to get to the meetings. Are there other opportunities? Has there been other opportunities looked at for making it more convenient for the committee members to attend the meetings?
We did talk about that. I think at this point, the frequency of these meetings, the times, that is still, I think, up for discussion. one of the things that was also raised in these meetings was if they are going to continue to happen in person, is childcare, right? I think for particularly maybe some of the newer voices that we want to recruit, childcare I think is going to be a challenge, especially in this time and age. So we did talk about perhaps changing the meeting time so that it will be more accessible for caregivers. But we also talked about potentially providing childcare at the meetings as well, so that again we can have more of a representation of voices.
I don't know what she's talking about. Some crap bullshit.
Thank you.
We're going back to the 70s.
Any other comments or questions by the board members?
Can you believe that?
I don't hear any. Thank you, Director Wade. That was a good report, and we look forward to hearing more about the outcomes of this effort. It's good.
It's good.
So the last board report is the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, TIAC.
Transit Equity!
Present and accounted for.
Kill me now.
We had a meeting on October 11th, and it was a report out agenda where the Equity Advisory Committee had information about service planning. Tom Mills came and provided some information about some of the updates to line 19.
See how there's nothing has, all of the COVID, the budget crisis, all of that has not affected any of these people. Zero effect. As if anything, it's made their lives better. Like the entire management staff now gets to work at home. All the office people are at home. They effectively are winners in this whole COVID. Drivers are losers because they're now in the middle of the collapse of civilization. They have a horrible general manager who doesn't care about them. These guys here don't even have to come into the meeting anymore. They turn on their computer. So there's a lot of winners. The billionaires, of course, have tripled their wealth since the COVID. It was all a planned fleecing of the government treasury. For some reason, the Trump supporters don't seem to register that on their radar. I'm not sure why. Yeah, the COVID has been good for the upper classes.
As well as line 15 at Thurman in the Northwest. There's some general information about how the service planning updates are made, and there were some specific planning updates that were brought to TIAC and discussed there in the committee. And then ODOT came and presented on another
more government
pretty exciting thing happening with their toll program. ODOT not only provided an update on the toll program and some of the latest with some of the routes and discussions around tolling, but they came with an invitation to the members of TIAC on how to engage. They're at a position where they really want to make sure they've got touch points in the community. So members of TIAC, folks that are present at these meetings had an opportunity to interface with ODOT, and we'll have an open invitation for community engagement around the toll. Right now, ODOT is in this sharing phase, and they really acknowledge it needs work so that they can get some meaningful community feedback. So that was an exciting thing to listen in on. There was an update on Title VI from Trimet staff, and it was an update on the Civil Rights Program and the latest reporting. And then there was an update on public safety and the Reimagining Public Safety Committee, the formation of it. Got some feedback from TIAC at that time as well. So we had an opportunity to hear from OPAL, Bus Riders Unite. We had some discussion there relative to comments in today's public forum. And it was an opportunity to not only get the update on the committee, but to hear about what's next. And so I know that there's a little bit of that in today's general manager's presentation. And that's the entirety of the agenda that was covered on the October 11th meeting. I don't have the date of the next meeting for TIAC. I believe the November meeting has not been scheduled, but I could be mistaken. If anyone from staff knows the date, I'd be happy to report back on that when I receive it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez.
Thank you. Where's Neil?
Does the board have any comments or questions on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee?
No, the board doesn't.
I do.
Oh.
All right, please.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm also trying to figure out the whole hand raising thing. Director Gonzalez, I thank you for the presentation. I just have a quick question on, I know that there was sort of this youth subcommittee or like this youth representation in TIAC. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that has been doing that has been done to engage the youth, particularly around the safety and transit discussion? If you have any updates, I'm just curious.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Director Y. Yes, there's a standing presence in the Transit Equity Advisory Committee of youth riders through the Multnomah County Youth Authority. They've had several members that have come from more than one area in the jurisdiction that have been participating in TIAC. And before we went virtual, the physical presence has always been a challenge for everyone at, 5 p.m. on a weekday. But I'd say especially for transit-dependent riders that are coming not from the downtown core, from those outer areas. So there was a request in those times from the youth participating in TIAC to have a committee specifically focused around youth engagement. And the youth members from the Multnomah County Youth Authority were the ones that were championing and stewarding that effort. Trimet had set up a pilot subcommittee in that time where the engagement was done throughout the jurisdiction, and the youth were able to set up that committee. I'll be frank, once we went into COVID and virtual mode, I lost track of whether that subcommittee had any ongoing activity. I know that it was in the getting set up, and it was in the kind of establishment phase right at the latter half of 2019 when we were transitioning, I'd say, into this virtual world. So there was
virtual world
that was all in advance of
I've been in my virtual world for
the discussions
decades
about the reimagining public safety. I defer to the update that will be given subsequent to this as to the formation of that committee. But at this time, there's no presence from the Multnomah County Youth Authority specifically that I'm aware of on that Reimagining Public Safety Committee. There remains a youth presence standing on the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, which does have a touch point and will have a touch point through Trimet for the Reimagining Public Safety. Yeah. So there's a couple of elements
See,
of
they just
youth
talk and say nothing.
Within TIAC.
Talk and say nothing.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm just interested, after talking to some of the youth in Clackamas County, both of them are transit dependent. They are very much interested in, leadership development, getting involved in some of our efforts. And so I think that's really great background information. And hopefully we can get the ball rolling again and really trying to be intentional about integrating this youth voice into the security and the TIAC and the other efforts. But I do have some names that I would love to recommend if that is something that is up for discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see what Retro Lance is up to.
Thank you. Good discussion. Anybody else comments or questions for Director Gonzalez? I'm not hearing any or seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to move on then to the general manager's report.
All right, I
Manager.
want, that's important to me.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Good morning.
That's very important to me, the general manager report, but let's save that for tomorrow. We are done. That is another hour. I just sat 2 hours in front of this computer doing Trimet stuff. The rest of the night is TV.